welcome to the Shamrock Bi-Week Edition. I'm Pete Sampson, joined by my co-host, Matt Fortuna. We were going to have Dan Orlovsky from ESPN, but decided too good of hair to come on this podcast. So
too good of hair. He's way too big time for this. He's the most popular man at every level of football this week after Jimmy Garoppolo let him off the hook.
As soon as Garoppolo walked out of the end zone, we knew we were going to have a hard time getting Dan to recap sort of calling Notre Dame's game against North Carolina. And we actually tried to record this last night, which was National Coffee Day, and there are a few people more caffeinated on screen than Orlovsky, who I think does an awesome job, just so we're clear. But maybe we'll have him on sometime down the road when he's not so in demand. I mean, the Garoppolo stuff, the Tua stuff from Thursday night. I mean, if you think covering Notre Dame is exhausting, I can't imagine covering the NFL.
And college. I mean, he's got NFL Live every day. He's doing Notre Dame, Carolina, and he has another college game every week. That is a very busy man. And I think, obviously I'm biased. He's been a multi-time guest of the show. I think he's one of the best in the business. I really do. He can break down film and convey it to the common man in ways that very few people in that business can. You would almost not know he was an NFL quarterback. And I mean that like in a very complimentary way. Like he's not like a meathead. He doesn't talk down to people. He's really, really good.
No, there's a gift to sort of convey very technical information in a way that people can digest and learn from it. Which is like when we were about to record on Thursday night, I was watching some of the BYU Utah State game where Louis Riddick was on. Like I would love for Louis Riddick to do a Notre Dame game because I think he does the same thing as Orlovsky very well. And there was a tie in there because I was watching the game last night. They were talking about BYU's sort of running back tandem, and they put in a speed back named Miles Davis, no joke. And Louis Riddick said it reminded him of when he played against Notre Dame when he was at Pitt, when Notre Dame would rely on Ricky Waters for the first 3 quarters of the game and then put in Rocket Ishmael in the fourth quarter when the opposing defense was tired. So I don't know if that says anything about BYU's running game next week.
It doesn't bode well for Notre Dame next week. That's true.
They're going against Ricky Waters and Rocket Ishmael, but perhaps it's hyperbole for the sake of his point. But yeah, Riddick and Orlovsky. I mean, I think those are 2 of my favorite guys at ESPN in terms of the way they do information. And man, I hope that at some point down the road, Riddick will do a Notre Dame game too, because I think that he's super, super talented.
I agree. They need to start playing midweek games if that's going to happen. But
yes, it's a little tricky on Saturdays, or get off NBC maybe. Maybe ESPN will pick up Notre Dame's contract, and the announcers you get Orlovsky and Riddick on a rotating basis. But Notre Dame, as all of our listeners know, off this weekend. BYU next weekend. Matt and I will both be there in Las Vegas. I was going to show up Thursday, but a middle school play has altered my travel plans, so I can be there on Thursday night to see my daughter perform. I'll miss Friday's show because I got to go to work, but we'll be there for that one. It should be a pretty awesome scene. Matt, you've been to Allegiant Stadium, I think, for the Pac-12 championship game?
Yeah, last year.
It sounds incredible.
It was awesome. Ended up being the last game of the Mario Cristobal era at Oregon, which I did not think was going to happen at the time. But no, it was really cool. Probably not a good comparison because Notre Dame fans obviously travel extremely well and they have a national fan base. But like in that particular game, and I say this because Utah obviously is close to Vegas, BYU fans close to Vegas. That was, last year at least, based on the schedule I had, that was the loudest venue I'd been in all year long. Like the state of Utah took over that entire stadium, and it turned into a 3-hour party because they ended up just kicking Oregon's ass from start to finish and winning the Pac-12 title. But it was, for us, press box, it's high up, but it's open air, so you really feel like you're part of the action and hearing the sounds. And it's just, it was really, really cool. It was really big. It was really spacious. I was on the sideline the whole time pregame. There's a lot of got to see the Oregon Duck and all that other fun stuff. Maybe I'll see a leprechaun next week, but it was fun. I mean, I have not been to what do they call the new Rams one? SoFi Stadium. SoFi,
yeah.
Everyone says that's by far the best. The national title game is there this year, so when Notre Dame's in it, we'll both go and check it out then. But the Allegiant Stadium is very, very cool, and it's like everything in Vegas is close, but it's close enough to the Strip where you can stay pretty much anywhere in town and get there pretty quickly.
Yeah, look, that game, aside from the before and the after, which I think will be delightful, the during is going to be, I think, very informative of this season for Notre Dame and year one of Marcus Freeman. And it's like, I think we're going to talk the bulk of the podcast about that, both in terms of like what happened in the first 4 games that we think is informative or predictive, what happened that's, kind of throwaway material, and then like look ahead to the final 8 games. Because, man, it's been sort of, I think if you said before the season, well, this is my opinion at least, like I thought Notre Dame 10-2, maybe 9-3. After the first game of the season, I thought definitely 10-2.
Mm-hmm.
11-1 felt like a stretch, but I felt more confident in 10-2 than I did before. Then after the second game, you're like, well, wait a minute. Are we at 6-6? After the third game, you're still sort of in that 7-5 mode. But then after last weekend, I think you sort of whipsaw back to like kind of an 8-4 outlook. So and I think the biggest thing for me, and this was like the first question in my mailbag this week, was like, somebody asked, like, what do you think Marcus Freeman has learned the most over the first month of the season? I think that he would probably tell you he got the messaging wrong out of Ohio State for, I think, a number of very understandable reasons. Mm-hmm. First game, alma mater, charged environment. You play well enough to convince yourself that you had a chance to win the game, even though Ohio State clearly was better. So it's easy to think like maybe you're farther ahead than you thought. So you can talk about finishing post game. Then a week later, you lose to Marshall, and suddenly it's about, okay, you got to start better. And then a week later, it's about, after you beat Cal, it's about kind of more of the one play, one life. Playing with the weight of the world on your shoulders. And then after North Carolina, a week later, your message changed yet again a 4th time, and you're talking about preparation and how important that is. And I think that's probably where he will stay the rest of the year. It makes sense to have more of a process-driven message than a results-driven message. But that, to me, is, I think, been the biggest takeaway of the first month, is just that Marcus Freeman has needed time to grow into a head coach, aside from like, when do you use your timeout? How do you manage the end of the half? Do you defer or receive? Whatever. Like, that stuff is fine. But I think it's much more setting the tone for the program itself. I think he's gone through a couple different versions of that in month 1, but probably has settled on something that's healthy and sustainable the rest of the way.
Yeah, I thought you answered that question really well, the way you just answered it now. I mean, it's you got to really pay attention the way you obviously have to like try to get a sense of what he's trying to convey both publicly and to his guys. And certainly, that message, reading between the lines, has differentiated really game to game, dictated in large part by results. And I do think process oriented is the way to go. And that's something that, like, we make our preseason prognostications. We guess how this guy's going to fare as a head coach. Like that's when you talk about the unknowns, when Jack Swarbrick gets up there introducing him as the next head coach back in December, talking about the risk, like, yeah, we could see he's a great coach on defense. We can see he's an awesome recruiter. We can see that most of those players seem like they'd run through a brick wall for him. But like, there's just so many peripheral and internal things that come across your desk every single day that you just don't know about until you prepare for it. And I think you referenced this in your mailbag, but if you didn't, or even if you did, I would strongly encourage our readers to go back and read your story from the offseason, talking to, first year and second year head coaches about, what they learned and what they, how they adjusted the most. I mean, Dave Aranda is probably the perfect example of a guy who looked, and granted he took over in the middle of a pandemic, but like he was so bad at Baylor. I think they were 2-7 that year, that you're like, wait a minute, did we have it wrong the whole time about this guy? Was he just part of good staffs with good players? And then he wins the freaking Big 12 his second year with a bunch of players that were obviously good, but were not guys that were on most of our radars coming into the year. So it's a process. I mean, we've talked a lot about the, lower floor, higher ceiling kind of philosophy, so to speak, with this hire. And we're seeing that play out right now. I did find it interesting, like, to go back. I wrote, in my cover 4 column this week, I did a subhead looking at, and this was, I was actually surprised I ended up including Notre Dame in here. It just kind of worked out that way. I looked at, as we close in on the first month of the season, some preseason over/under win totals for teams and teams that like are already cashing out or are already not going to cash out based on 4 games of play. And Notre Dame's on BetMGM was 9.5, which surprised me. I feel like I remember it being closer to 8, but it was 9.5, which means they need to win out. And by winning out, that would mean winning 10 straight games overall for over bettors to actually cash on. And crazier things have happened, but it's not looking too good right now.
Yeah,
if you had money on the Irish preseason to win 10 games, but like
8 straight from here, 10 straight overall.
I mean, I probably would have had preseason 9 and like that would be a no play for me, right? Like I just, again, new head coach, much tougher schedule than they had in years past. I probably would have guessed in the 9 range. Breaks go their way, 10 or 11. If they don't, 8 and 4. We'll see what happens from here on out, but it's certainly been a roller coaster of a first month of the season. And, the rare instance where, I think one of the great things about being independent is essentially getting to dictate your own schedule structure and the bye weeks, which are almost always coinciding around midterms week or between the 5th and 6th or 6th and 7th game of the season. And in this case, it's not. And in this case, you're coming out of the bye with 8 games in 8 weeks against a pretty strong slate of opponents with still, frankly, a lot of questions about your football team. So buckle up. It should be exciting, if nothing else, following along this program over October and November.
If we had to pick MVPs of offense, defense, and special teams through 4 games, who you got?
Okay, so I'll answer yours first. I had a couple different prompts I was going to throw back at you.
Okay.
All right. MVPs of offense, defense, special teams. Okay. Mayer, offense. I know the numbers probably aren't what we thought they'd be, but he's still by far their best player. Defense. This is me off the top of my head, not looking at stats. I almost want to say either Maris Leofau or Jason Adamalola. I just feel like those guys have been pretty big impact players defensively so far. Not that Foskey hasn't, but I just expected Foskey's, to the talk from NFL scouts and opposing coaches on him anytime I called him up in this offseason was like, yeah, this guy's going to play himself into a top 10 pick this year if he has the kind of season. Like, he came back to do that. And he's been fine, but I wouldn't say he's been on anyone's radars in that regard so far. Special teams, I'll go Brandon Joseph. I mean, he actually returns punts. He hasn't turned any over.
Breath of fresh air.
He's I mean, like baby steps, but like it's been incremental progress. I am like watching. I find myself watching and paying closer attention when he's back there now than I did in years past. Whereas it's like, all right, fair catch. Where are they going to start? So I guess in that regard, I will say special teams as a whole, and we'll get to this a little bit. As a whole, has been a pleasant surprise for me.
I agree.
So far this season,
it's only because I'm trying to add some diversity to the conversation. I won't pick Mayer on offense because clearly he's like the MVP. But I think sort of Jared Patterson's return to form coinciding with the offensive line playing better, I don't think is a coincidence at all. Week 1, he doesn't play. The line can't really do anything. Week 2, he does play. The line was really a shambles. And as he has gotten healthier, as he has been able to sort of bring Zeke Correll along, help Joe Alt, just sort of help the position in general, I think that is you're seeing the dividends pay off of that. And so, like, if a left guard is your MVP, that's a little bit weird. But even if your left guard is like your second choice MVP after your tight end, I mean, that's a weird combination. Not one that is indicative of explosive offense, but Notre Dame is where Notre Dame is. So I'll go Patterson just because I think he's sort of a representative and a symbol of like the offensive line rounding into form as he has rounded into form. Defense, to me, I thought it was actually easy choice. Tariq Bracy, as the nickel, has been. He leads the team or leads the defense in snaps by a wide margin. I think he's been incredibly productive. Had a couple rough goes with Josh Downs last weekend, who hasn't. But other than that, I think he's been outstanding. And like the fact that Notre Dame was the way Al Golden has used him to like really, I think, bring out the best in him as a player. Mike Mickens as well. There's some credit there for really like, it's a 5th year that I don't know if it will finish this way, but like in my 22 years covering, like Jonas Gray was like this, Corey Mays was like this. Guys who were like as 5th-year seniors, like Javon McKinley to a certain extent. Yeah. Just like guys who were just here for 4 years, but didn't really do a whole lot. Williams. Yeah, Dexter Williams. Like Dexter Williams, at least you got flashes of it in 2017 before then he got suspended. But it's very rare that you have guys who sort of float through a program for 4 years and then boom, the light goes on as senior or 5th-year seniors and they really have it. So that's been impressive to me. I mean, John Sott, the punter, Harvard grad transfer. When I talked to him a couple of weeks ago, he said Brian Polian actually reached out to him. So that was like sort of in the works, at least a little bit before Brian Mason came on. But I mean, I think overall, like Brian Mason's special teams have been impressive because, I mean, you think back to week 1 where Marcus Freeman, I think it was one of the first things he mentioned. It was like our kickoff return was bad. Like that needs to get a lot better. And I think that those units across the board really have buttoned up quite a bit. You had the big block punt against Marshall, which almost put Notre Dame in position to come back and avoid a loss there. They haven't really necessarily broken big returns, but I think they've been extremely competent and efficient in what they're doing. And I think you look back at where things were in the summer, where like John Sott, can he punt? Blake Grupe, that operation looked a little sort of all over the board. So
we got to shout out Milk if we're giving out an MVP.
Yeah, Milk. I mean, that was one of the things Sott said. Like as soon as I got to work with Milk, like everything was good. So I just think like that for Notre Dame special teams to get to a point this quickly where just like these are good units. These are sort of value adds to like whether Notre Dame wins or loses, and it's pretty obvious. Like I think Brian Mason has done a really nice job out of the gate.
Yeah. So my prompts. First one's going to be the biggest surprise of the year, and I had Bracy down for that. 3rd in tackles for loss as well on the roster, which is
he led the team surprise. For I think the first 3 weeks, just like not how that's supposed to work. But.
No. You'll probably have the same answer I do, but most impressive freshman.
Ooh, most impressive freshman. Can't remember. Why am I blanking on this?
Plays a similar position to Tariq Bracy.
Oh, yeah, Benjamin Morrison for sure. Sorry. Apologies to the Morrison family on that one. I think you and I both talked to people who didn't just compliment Morrison going into the season.
The quote we got was what? Best corner we've recruited
signed
in 10
years. So I was like, okay, I guess we'll see about that. But I mean, he's been outstanding. You can sort of see where that's going, and I think that we also had talked about in this podcast that, for how good Jaden Mickey was in the spring, fall camp was a struggle. He sort of like, it was a baptism by fire that he didn't get in March and April. So I think you've seen that out there, whether that be at Ohio State or even last week in North Carolina. But I think Morrison he's been tremendous. And it's not like there's a whole lot of candidates. Like it would be great if we could say Tobias Merriweather, but he hasn't really been out there a whole lot. Eli Raridan, especially with Kevin Bauman gone for the year, is probably going to move into more of a prominent role. But there just aren't a whole lot of options for freshman of the year. I don't know if I'm trying to think of, like Junior Tui Halamaka has played a little bit more. I think he'll be good long term, but this roster is not set up for a freshman to really answer the call unless it's going to be Merriweather, which is sort of who Notre Dame needs it to be over the last 8 weeks of the year.
Since we'll stick with the Vegas theme, we'll go over under here. I've got a few for you. Over under Drew Pine season passing yards, 2,500 yards. He's at 459 now.
So, but basically 2,000 more yards spread across 8 games.
We can include bowl if you think it. I'm going to leave it open ended because it is up for debate. So will he get it or will he not? And
I think they will go to a bowl game. I think he will be over that figure, but that's a good line. You should work in Vegas. Are you on a gambling show, by the way? You should be on a gambling show.
Maybe. I've got over. It's if you do it just on pure math, it might not look that doable. But let's be honest, there's going to be a game, if not games, where they're playing from behind, and he's just going to have to throw it a lot and get yardage doing it that way. I think
it's
that's
only
one scenario.
222 yards per game over 9 games.
It's right. It's not that much. It looks like a big number. And you factor in the 9th game. I think he'll get over, but yeah, it's a good prompt. You're right. Here's one for
yourself
you.
On the back, Matt.
Michael Mayer, 75 catches. He's at 22 through 4 games.
Over. To me, that's a bad line, Matt. I think you're going to get too much action on
we'll
the
see.
over.
We'll come back to this at the end of the year.
I'm going to write these down.
I think over, but I think it's not as like hit you over the head obvious as would have been preseason when we said that. Like at some point, and you tweet this every game, it seems like, how do you leave Michael Mayer open in the red zone? Like at some point, defense is going to realize, oh wait, this guy's significantly better than every other person on the field, and no one else in the air has proven they can really do anything to us yet. Let's just not let this guy beat us. So I'll go over, but I think that's a better line than you're giving it credit for. This one's good. Actually, maybe it's not good, but it's a good prompt. Touchdown catches by wide receivers this year, 8.
And we're at 1 right now. 1 through 4 games. Can they average 1 a game the rest of the season?
Less than 1. Less than 1. Even if they don't make a bowl, but even if they don't make, it's 8 games to get 7 to tie it. So yeah, one to break it. Yeah,
I will go over on that one as well, but I'm reluctant to do so. I feel like at the beginning of the year, I thought Lorenzo Styles would have 10 on his own, and he's sitting there at 1. He's the only one. But but then it's like you factor in Mayer, who's probably going to be good for 15 or 12, and the running backs probably good for 10 spread among the 3 of them. Is Pine really going to have 30 touchdown catches? Because if Mayer had 10, the running backs had 10, then you need Pine to have, you need the receivers to have 8 for him to have 28 touchdown catches, which is a big number, right? Like the idea of Drew Pine having 28 to 30 touchdown catches feels like a reach, but that's what you would need for the wide receiver position only to finish 8. So maybe, you know what? I'm gonna turn this around. I think this is a good prompt, and I'm gonna go under on this one because Mayer and Tyree and Estime and Diggs are gonna carry the load.
We're in agreement on all 3 so far. I've got under as well. It shouldn't be under, but it's hard to game out a scenario. Maybe there's a game where they play Navy and Braden Lindsey has a breakout game and happens to catch 3 touchdowns. It's gonna take a day like that from someone to push them over the edge.
Yeah.
Because the way this offense is moving right now, it's hard to picture that happening 7 or 8 more times. Audric Estime yards from scrimmage, 1,000. He's at 307 combined rushing receiving right now.
I'm going to go under on that one. Even though I want the over to happen just because it means he'll come in for more interviews. So estimate 1K rushing receiving. I'll go under on that one on the strength of Tyree and Diggs. I think it says more about Tyree and Diggs than it does about estimate.
I'll go under as well for all the reasons you just said, which puts us in a perfect 4-for-4 agreement right now. He's an awesome interview. He's an awesome player.
Not a good singer, though.
Not a good singer. That was on the Bon
Tiny
Jovi
Mike
thing?
With Litchfield Ashwan. Did you ever see that?
No, they did Bon Jovi prompts when he came to.
No, it was last year. Last year, they had Litchfield Ashwan going around to the freshmen asking them if they could sing the fight song. And when he got to Estime thought the fight song was the "Here Come the Irish," that. I can't remember the singer's name, but it's just a kind of more of a folk.
Oh, the pregame one at kickoff.
I'm not going to sing it into this podcast. But
no, don't.
If you're listening, it's like Here Comes the Irish thing. So he thought that was the fight song, and he also thought the fight song at the end of Here Come the Irish included the dun dun
Ship it up to Boston, right?
I think the first few bars of that. So like he thought that was the victory march, which sort of endeared him to me forever.
No, I think that's pretty cool. I mean, well, it doesn't mean he's a bad singer.
No. When he sung "Here Come the Irish," it meant he was a bad singer. It was really bad.
Picture him.
I'm gonna have to find this and send it to you.
I don't want to picture anyone other than the person who actually sings that song, singing that song. Yeah, he's a great quote. Guess he's not a good singer. I'll forgive him for not knowing the fight song as a freshman. I will go under, though, because I just think, when you saw the way they were able to use those backs and have success against North Carolina, I'm not saying every game will be that easy offensively, but I do think they found something to work with as far as we've got 3 pretty damn good options back here. Last one, and this one I kind of just picked a number. Turnovers forced, 12.5 over under. They have 1 right now. They had 25 last year. They finished tied for 11th in the country.
I feel like we have to finish on opposite sides of this one. So if you whatever you choose, I'll choose the opposite.
You first. I'm asking questions here.
Okay. 25 last year, and you're saying 12 this year.
12.5, yeah.
12.5. Man, 12.5. I will go over on that one.
Good, because I want to go under.
Okay. Because 12 would have finished 119th last year.
It's better than they are right now.
No, I'm sorry, 113th. All right. So turnovers forced 12. I'm over. You're under. That's what it's all riding on the rest of the year.
Pretty much. Although I'll take a victory lap if Mayer finishes under 75 just because you insulted the line.
Your line was pretty bad. Yeah, he's going to crush that. So he
should crush it.
This will have to be paid out. Perhaps it'll get paid out before the Holiday Bowl if Notre Dame's playing in that, because you're going to have to talk your way into covering that game in San Diego.
No problem. I have family who lives in Southern California now. I never need an excuse to go back out there.
Okay.
I'll be there then. That'll be fun. Who are they going to play in that game? Iowa, maybe. That'd be fun. That wouldn't be fun, but it would be entertaining.
Nice place to be. I don't know. I was looking at ACC bowl tie-ins today because I want to figure out what the date of Notre Dame's potential bowl date is. I think they're pretty much all on December 30th. Once you take the
what day of the
week
is that?
I don't know. What's the week? December Friday. So a week in San Diego, fly out the day after Christmas.
Not bad.
I think it could be done. Gator Bowl, Sun Bowl, Mayo Bowl. The Holiday Bowl is actually on the 28th, so even better.
There you go.
So
Holiday Bowl sounds so much better than everything you just said.
The Pinstripe Bowl,
against Florida, but I'll take it. I said as a Yankee fan, I'll take Petco Park, which still hasn't hosted a football game yet. They were supposed to last year, and UCLA pulled out at the last minute against NC State.
All right, what about because I wanted to go there game by game the rest of the season, wins and losses.
Okay, see, you're a little more detailed than I am. I had a record. I'm still not sure how they.
I'm going to force you to go. I'm going to force you to go game by game, and then we'll add up your record to see if it matches what you actually wrote down.
Let me. You go first because I need to because you obviously thought this out, and I need to match my number to the wins losses.
BYU, I think they will win next week. I think BYU is fine. I don't think BYU is great. I also think BYU is sort of a decent matchup for Notre Dame as it's currently constructed because it's not a shootout offense. And I think if Notre Dame's lines were playing like they did against Cal, I would pick a loss. But I think the second half of Cal and the entire North Carolina game should travel to Las Vegas. And that now that you've eliminated the chance of Drew Pine being overwhelmed by the moment from game plans for if you're Tommy Rees, I just don't think BYU is that good. I think they're fine, but I think Notre Dame's lines will get them get that done next week.
I'm less sold on BYU right now than I was entering the season.
Yeah, just like their defensive front, I just don't think is. I was expecting it to be a little bit more like Harbaugh Stanford in terms of ass kicking, and it's not at all. So I think Notre Dame will be fine. All right, Stanford.
We're doing both of them. Yeah, I'll take Notre Dame. BYU, I'll take them to be. I mean, they better beat Stanford. I mean, Stanford's. That offense has shown a little bit of life this year. I mean, if you watch that USC game, like they moved the ball extremely well. They just kept turning it over in the red zone. So I don't think it's like the cupcake it's been the last couple of years. But no, I've got Notre Dame in that.
Yeah, and I mean, Stanford has some injury issues. I realize they're still very talented with Tanner McKee at quarterback, but EJ Smith's out for the year. They don't have a whole lot, I think, on the outside for Notre Dame to be concerned with. And like, it's not a super dynamic offense either that's going to stress Notre Dame the way that, like,
they ran the slow mesh extremely well in a way. Like, I've never even seen someone try the slow mesh other than Wake, because it's obviously more complicated than it looks. And we saw Miami three players run into each other trying to do it last week. But
it's not like installing the option in one off season like Charlie Weiss tried to do in 2007. Like, it takes years to master.
It's another 2007 reference on this podcast. That's not good.
I just EJ Smith is out. I don't think that it's not the days of where they have tight ends running around that are all NFL guys like Notre Dame has. And like, if you're going to beat Notre Dame, I think you're going to probably beat them laterally more than you're going to beat them vertically, the way Marshall did it. Like, Marshall did an awesome job exposing Notre Dame on the perimeter. And I don't like Marshall.
Marshall's been terrible ever since that game.
Yeah,
by the way. I don't know if we've mentioned that enough. That game made 0 sense in real time, and it makes even less sense ever since. It's kind of like the South Florida game in 2011.
So I just think that's Stanford has come down a long, long way, and I don't think that they're going to sort of snap back to it on an October night in South Bend. Right. Especially look, Stanford beat Colgate, hooray! Then they lose to USC. They get pretty soundly beat by Washington. They play Oregon this weekend at Oregon, and then they host Oregon State, who's really good.
They're good.
And then they're at Notre Dame, so it's like, Stanford, more likely than not, is going to be sitting there at 1-5 in mid-November. The program is just not in good shape right now.
It's not. It's there are a lot of parallels, I think, between what they did and what they're doing with their peer institution, Northwestern, with what they did and what they're doing right now. Not a whole lot of inspiration coming out of either of those locales right now.
Nice stadium, though, coming to Northwestern.
Yeah, there's a nice stadium coming here. We'll have to go to a concert at some point.
Yeah.
With our invisible guests on postgame pods can hook it up for us with Live Nation. But yeah, those renderings look pretty cool, and I'm excited to go up to Ryan Field for something other than like whatever it is they've got there now. But UNLV is. Oh, sorry, you have some more.
I was going to say Ryan Field was my third favorite high school stadium in the Big Ten. UNLV.
What's your first two?
No, I don't have any. UNLV a win. I don't have any more to say. That is unfortunately, much like Marshall, is like kind of a what are we even doing here type of game. If Notre Dame loses,
they're not bad, Pete.
No,
I'm not saying they're going to win, but like
they're not a doormat program. Like,
no,
I think they're 3-1. And they play, I think, 2 straight Friday night games here coming up.
They lost to Cal by 6. They beat North Texas by 31, and they beat Utah State, who, as we mentioned earlier, is terrible.
But almost beat 10. BYU, or at least gave BYU a game.
Yeah, they've got they're not like UNLV has long been one of the worst programs period in the country. They are not that anymore. I mean, I don't think they're going to beat Notre Dame, but like, I don't think that's the like cakewalk that we envisioned preseason.
No, I'm totally in agreement on that one. All right, Syracuse, which looks to me a lot different now than it did in July, as not a game I even considered as a loss in the off season. Now it's like it has some very trap qualities to it, does it not? I mean, it's the week.
Well, I thought
if it wasn't the week before Clemson, the week before Clemson part is what probably scares me most about Syracuse.
Well, I thought that trap qualities preseason. And I didn't think Notre Dame was going to lose it preseason, but when's the last time they actually played at the Carrier Dome? They've played all these Syracuse games at MetLife or Yankee Stadium. Yeah, long time ago. It's not McNabb long ago, but close to it. They're not even last year. I know they missed a bowl, but they were 5-7. They have a pretty dynamic offense. I think they're even more dynamic now since they reshuffled their offensive coaching staff a little bit. After 2 games this season, I thought, man, Syracuse is really freaking good. Now they are 4-0. They'll be 5-0 after playing Wagner this weekend. Another team, by the way, that will beat their over-under win total in the soonest time possible. I think it was 4.5. Good for you, Dino Babers. This is one I think right now I'll take Syracuse. And I think they've kind of regressed a little bit the last couple of weeks to the mean. Virginia had them at the end. Purdue completely had them at the end. They're lucky to be 4-0 right now and not 2-2, but that's a really tricky place to play. It's a week before Clemson. That offense is pretty dynamic. Sean Tucker is one of the best running backs in the country, even if the stats may not show that right now. Right now, I'd say here I will go with Syracuse.
That it's interesting because it's the week after Clemson for Syracuse,
right?
And Notre Dame is the midpoint of really a brutal 5-game stretch, which there are not a lot of brutal 5-game stretches if you're an ACC team in conference play. But NC State, week later at Clemson, week later host Notre Dame. After that, you're at Pittsburgh, then home to Florida State, and then you're at Wake Forest without a bye week in between. That's 6 games in 6 weeks. I would think if I'm Syracuse, I'm sort of downshifting the importance of Notre Dame a little bit, which I think removes maybe some of the trap qualities to it. Because Notre Dame is it's the least important of those 5 games to Syracuse.
If they're an ACC contender, it is, but I don't think they'll be an ACC contender.
No, but they'll probably still be an ACC contender feel like they are one at 2-2. And if they get NC State or Clemson, which I don't think they're going to,
they play Clemson really well. I don't think they'll win,
they get NC State the week after the NC State Clemson game. Would it shock you if NC State went to the Carrier Dome or whatever it's called now and lost to Syracuse? That wouldn't surprise.
JMA Wireless, put some respect on it.
Yeah,
I know it's been a while, Pete.
That wouldn't surprise me. I would be less surprised if NC State beat NC State, or I'm sorry, if Syracuse beat NC State than I would if Syracuse beat Notre Dame. So
I think that's fair. Just knowing the recent history of both programs and one of their ability to kind of step in it more than the other. But that's a swing game. I'll tell you right now, this is going to ruin the surprise of who you think I'm going to pick in Notre Dame, Boston College, and Notre Dame Navy. But I had 7-5 as my record, but go forward.
Okay. Clemson, as good as Notre Dame's offensive line has been for the last 5.5 quarters, Clemson's defensive line is no joke, and I think their
secondary is, but Notre Dame can't make them pay with that.
Yeah, I just don't think Drew Pine and Sam Hartman have a whole lot in common, and so
they're newsboy caps. Did you not see my tweet?
That's true. They do have something in common, sort of their Peaky Blinders vibes.
And his sister's at Wake right now, I believe.
Oh, interesting. So I have a hard time seeing Drew Pine having enough time to be comfortable and spray the ball all over the place. I also have a hard time seeing Notre Dame running the ball effectively on Clemson. And I did not think I would get to a point where DJ Uiagalelei would be an asset for Clemson as I analyze this game, but
he was the first time.
He's moving in a good, that was a long time ago. That makes as much sense as Notre Dame losing to Marshall. But I think he's above, he is more than a competent quarterback at this point, and he's bigger than Notre Dame's linebackers. So I think Clemson will get Notre Dame, and I guess that would snap a 6-game win streak for Notre Dame after that. So they'd be sitting there at 6-3.
According to you, would have been a 5-game win streak for me.
Right.
The fact that, I'm sure all of us have had some version of this conversation in the offseason looking ahead to the season. The fact that we're now talking about DJU the way you just did, and it's not. Well, who will even start a quarterback for Clemson that game? I think is pretty noteworthy. Like, I mean, look, the guy could go out and lay an egg against NC State tomorrow, and we're back having that same conversation. But he made some freaking big time throws in that Wake Forest game, and he needed every damn one of them to escape that thing victorious. I don't know if there was a Twitter clip going around this week of, I think it was the first overtime touchdown pass he threw, and like it was shot from the angle of the receiver, and like the Wake defensive lineman literally has DJ's leg completely wrapped up, and you just see him like dragging him with one leg as he fires off a touchdown pass. I mean, Notre Dame fans know how good he can be. We all saw that 2 years ago. If he can repeat that, man, it'll be hard to find a guy who's like had a better career at Notre Dame Stadium, who's not even on your schedule regularly than that guy, even though he did lose that first game. I don't know, Clemson, they got to get that secondary in order, but I don't think that really affects Notre Dame, frankly, with the way Notre Dame's throwing the ball so far.
No. We'll find out plenty about – I think we learned quite a bit about Clemson last week. They play NC State on Saturday. So by the time you listen to this podcast, we might have a different opinion of Clemson. But then they got a game at Florida State on October 15th, which I think when the year started, it was like, whatever, they'll just roll through there. But I mean, that's interesting too. And then they host Syracuse before coming to Notre Dame, or before a week off and then coming to Notre Dame. Navy and Boston College, can we just do those together? I don't know if we need to analyze a whole lot. Like, will Phil Dracovic even be upright at that point, the way Boston College's offensive line is played? I don't know.
It's bad there. I mean, they did lose both starting tackles for the year, I believe. But I mean, again, this could change by the time you hear this. They are more than 2 touchdown underdogs at home against Louisville on Saturday. Like, that's the state of things right now. It got really bad really quick, and I thought this was going to be a bit of a transition year for them from a roster depth standpoint. But it's bad, and when you lose at home to Rutgers to open things up, and you lose one of the few ones you're supposed to get, I think that just kind of has this spiraling effect on you. And that's not – when Notre Dame was 0-2, it's like, oh, man, it's going to be really ugly for them if Phil comes in and beats them in 2 months. I can't see that happening with the way BC's played this year.
No, they've allowed 15 sacks.
John McNulty's returned, by the way, and George Takich, who's like might be there. Well, no, Zay Flower's still there, but he's made some plays for them this year. I know that.
Yeah, it's not a good matchup for Phil Dracovic. I mean, I was just looking over like the worst offensive lines in the country in terms of sacks allowed. Boston College at 127. And then you move up, you see Syracuse at 118, UNLV at 118, Stanford at 118.
Syracuse won't surprise me.
Yeah, so that
3 don't.
That could be. Well, didn't you write the Tommy DeVito, like Illinois quarterback?
Yeah.
Like, this is the first time I've ever been sacked in a game. I think that's sort of where Notre Dame's defensive line rises to the occasion a little bit. But probably not against, maybe not against Clemson. That gets us to USC, which I feel like is kind of the perception generating power of this game will last probably 9 months, win or lose. I do not have a good read on USC at all. I watched a little bit of them. When I watched their game at Oregon State, they were god awful. To win a game by 3 points when you're +4 in turnover margin is actually really difficult to do.
Oh yeah.
But they did it. And, they played well offensively against Stanford, not defensively. I just think that USC is a bit of a mess right now.
You're a little harsh. You go first. Go. They're fascinating to me, but
they are for me as well. I'm really torn on this one.
Really?
I am. So I feel like I could talk myself into either result. You think so? You're more confident in USC beating Notre Dame than I am, and I'm not saying Absolutely. I'm confident in Notre Dame winning the game. I just have a hard time reconciling USC being sort of like and like they may look a lot different on Thanksgiving weekend than they do on September or October 1st, right?
That's the thing with that. That's partly why they're so fascinating to me. I mean, at their best, like when things are clicking, damn, they look really freaking good. They look like Lincoln Riley's been coaching those guys for longer than just a few months. We talked about Notre Dame having just one forced turnover on the year. USC has forced 14, and they haven't given one up yet. Like, that's not sustainable, but it's still pretty freaking crazy to like even get this far into your season and be 14-0 turnovers wise.
That's insane.
Yeah. But to your point, I mean, like, yeah, they've given up a lot of yardage. They've made some timely defensive plays, particularly in that Stanford and Oregon State game. I will say, like, Caleb Williams, for just a sophomore, and we've seen different versions of this game, for years on end, where the more talented team is pretty much getting its ass kicked for 3 quarters, but there's a door left open for them at the end there, and they take advantage of it. Like, he marched those guys down on that final drive, and I saw that on my illegal stream, Pac-12 Network game viewing Saturday night, and like that money throw to Jordan, I think it was Addison, to win the game was like, it's one of those throws you watch on TV and you're like, no, because it looks like it's going to get picked, and then you see the replay and you're like, oh my God, he just put that ball in like the perfect spot. It was like no one could have caught that other than Addison. Like, that guy is cool, calm, and collected. I know he's been hyped up a lot, but he's lived up to it so far. And you look at that schedule, obviously the trip to Utah on October 15th is tough, but they've got Arizona State and Washington State at home next. I think Washington State's pretty good, but they're much better at home than they're on the road. Then they go at Arizona versus California versus Colorado at UCLA, which will probably be more Trojans fans there than Bruins, and then Notre Dame. Their front line top 22 are damn near as good as anyone in the country. I don't know how deep they'll be, how much they'll have to tap into that depth by game number 12. But you look at that schedule, and Utah is the only team I see on there that's going to beat them, or that I think will beat them. And if we're talking about 10-1 USC going into that Notre Dame game, and with presumably a Pac-12 title game a week after, we're talking about USC wins and they're playoff bound, or they lose because Notre Dame spoiled them. And like, that just makes that game. And I get, this is not probably the way Notre Dame fans envisioned it 2 months ago. Like, we're going to play spoiler in our final game, but like, that absolutely adds to the stakes of this rivalry game. And frankly, when's the last time there were stakes with Notre Dame USC from a national standpoint for both teams? Yeah,
for both teams, it's been a while, because like it's a really bizarre series. I don't have the stats off the top of my head, but like the number of times they've both been ranked is surprisingly low. Usually when one program is up, the other program is down.
Right.
In the 80s, it was Notre Dame up, USC down.
Which is weird, because it's not like these are in-state rivals who are like, can't recruit because this team's getting
one
like,
doesn't affect the other. It's like there are very few exceptions where they've both been top 20 or top 10 teams. It's interesting the way you talk about like November with like, who knows what USC is going to look like by then, because I thought about it in terms of more them getting better, not them getting injured. But that makes it difficult to know, like, all right, which path are they going to take? Because it seems like something where you can't do both, right? Like, if you're going to get injured, you're not going to get better. But if you stay healthy, you'll survive, and then you should be really firing at the end of the year.
We've seen that offense. Like, I don't know how much, like, at its best, and I know it was against Rice, Fresno State, and Stanford, but I don't know if they have a whole other level to get to offensively. Like, it was pretty damn good in those 3 games, and they were able to survive the one game it wasn't, on the strength of a defense that, again, I haven't been exactly blown away by this year. And I don't think, like, you're not going to, 14 turnovers over 4 games, whatever that projects out to, like, that's not going to.
Yeah, I just looked at that. So that's your plus 3.5 turnovers per game.
Per game, yeah. Like, at some point.
In the last 10 years, do you know how many teams have finished plus 2 for a season?
0?
1.
Alabama 16. That's my guess.
No, it was not. It was.
I feel like that Alabama team had more defensive touchdowns than like most teams did offensive.
No, it was Arizona State in 2020.
Of course. Yeah. How could I forget?
Herm Edwards.
How many games did they play that year? 3?
That's a good point. They only played 4 games.
Yeah, okay.
So that doesn't even count. I guess I should eliminate that from the rules entirely.
I think Antonio Pierce was the DC on that one.
The point being, I think that history would suggest USC is in for a world of turnover hurt in the final 8 games of the season, because everybody in the history of college football, at least of the last 10 years, which is what CFB stats can tell us, has lived that experience. Like, they may finish plus 1.3 or something and lead the nation in turnovers, but from here on out, it's probably going to be even. Like if they were even the rest of the way, they would still have an awesome turnover margin in the final counting of that. So if you said
they avoid Washington and Oregon, like
that's a good
obviously
point.
That trip to Utah is tough, but you might be able to survive that one. Like as far as making the playoff. Colorado's the worst team in the country.
Oh, yeah.
Cal, we saw awful. Cal. They're not going to challenge them offensively, although Jaden Ott had 274 yards against Arizona last week, 1 week
also,
after Notre Dame lost.
Another on the, that looks weird in retrospect, holding Jaden Ott to 30 yards.
Right. He's only a freshman, too. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's outstanding. So, I'll go with Notre Dame closing out with a win. So they lose at Clemson, finish 9-3. That would be a 9-1 finish, which is making me uncomfortable when I say it out loud because that's a lot of wins in a short amount of time. But
how do they beat USC? You give me a lot of historically
I think that USC's lines are not good.
Fair.
I think that you could play a similar game plan to Ohio State, but do a lot better job of it because your lines are good. This is all if Drew Pine gets hurt, forget it. I'm just saying as they're currently constructed, if no one gets hurt the rest of the way, which is not what's going to happen. I think Notre Dame at the back end of the defense, especially with Tariq Bracy, very rarely have I thought Notre Dame's secondary was actually a strength of what they were doing. And I think the way it's constructed right now, they're doing a pretty nice job of it. The defensive line is not going to get worse from here. I think they should get better as, Riley Mills, Howard Cross, Foskey is again making money with his play after kind of not really being there for the first couple of weeks of the season. So it gets you back to 9-3, which gets a return to what we started the show with, what a whiplash vibe this entire season has had, where you feel 1 week, they can go 10-2 to wait a minute, are they even going to make it to 6-6? But I do think
finishes 9-3 with a win at USC. I predict the off-season hype for Marcus Freeman next year will be even bigger than it was this past year.
That will be interesting. I think so much of that will depend on, did you finish the deal in recruiting or not? Because last year at this time, it was recruiting, that's a sure thing. And then the class got off to the number one start, yada, yada. It sputtered a little bit. Keon Keeley decommits. Marcus Freeman is actually in Dallas now, I think, as we record this on a Friday afternoon, to see Peyton Bowen, who's kind of a fringe 5-star prospect safety. I've written about him. Great fit for Notre Dame. His quarterback is a 5-star who's going to Oklahoma. Oklahoma's really involved. A&M is really involved. They're going to have a fight to keep him. So it's if the recruiting class ends with losing Keeley and losing Bowen, really good receiver class. Charles Jagasaw, the offensive tackle from Northwest Illinois, very, very good. But I think it won't feel different enough from a Brian Kelly class, I think, for people to sort of get carried away with the hype. But if they finish 9-1 and beat USC, then that's happening. I think you would sort of have that hype go through. But the recruiting part of it, I think, is fascinating because that was such a huge calling card of Freeman's early on and sort of carried the entire summer in a lot of ways. And it's kind of sputtered a little bit since then. They're making new offers at running back. I don't know what that says about how they feel about Jeremiah Love, who's the 4-star back from the St. Louis area, who's a really, really good prospect. Would be, I think, as highly rated a running back to sign with Notre Dame since Greg Bryant in 2013. So that's goes back away in terms of the running backs Notre Dame has chased down. So if they can hold on to Bowen, get Love, finish 9-3 with a win over USC, then I think then you're getting into the Marcus Freeman hype train will have replaced its axles after the Marshall game, and will again be leaving the station for a 9-month off season.
Just wait till the school figures out you can do NIL now too. They might actually recruit even better. You've got 9-3. I've got 7-5. So they're guaranteed to finish 8-4. I think that much is clear.
And then we'll all come down to the turnovers forced over under bet that we had.
There we go. How are you spending your bye weekend?
So bye weekend, got some MSA soccer. Anyone in the Michiana area can appreciate the show that youth soccer organization is here. So that Saturday morning, there's a Ferris wheel that has been set up in South Bend that'll be going on tonight.
On?
Hopefully
Okay.
Yeah, hopefully I'll be live to tell the tale. And then I think I will actually be attending a Notre Dame sporting event with Tate. There's the men's soccer team plays tonight. I'm not sure who they're playing, but I know that they're playing, and the weather is awesome. So that might be it. And then, yeah, that's probably, if I can find some time to watch Michigan, Iowa, I would really like to check that one out as well. So, and you
say that, and then you'll watch Iowa's offense for 2 quarters, and your eyes will start bleeding, and you're like, I saw this weeks 1 and 2 in South Bend.
Yeah, it'll be like, Tate, we got to get to your soccer game, man. We got to get some extra practice in. I don't need to watch this crap. What do you got? Any Street Fest apple picking?
Yeah, actually, not apple picking, but Apple Fest is actually going on in Lincoln Square this weekend. So we will we'll be there. Probably not tonight, but we'll be there at some point this weekend. Yeah,
it's a game. So Michigan, Iowa's this weekend. I'm intrigued by that one. I would like to watch, but I will not stay up for Oregon Stanford just to sort of see it. And then obviously the NC State Clemson game is a 7:30 sort of game day primetime game. Also, thankful that Notre Dame is not playing in the Carolinas this weekend, as they often are the first weekend of October, because that is a mess down there. Definitely sending some good vibes to our listeners in the South, particularly Florida, after the events of this week. So hopefully it'll be a low-key weekend, and Notre Dame will not make any news on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday.
That'd be good.
And then we can
good for everybody.
Yeah, and then we can check in next week and get ready for our trip to Vegas. I know we had talked about maybe having somebody from the gambling industry on our podcast next week. I think we should still make that happen, right? It's much more gettable than Dan Orlovsky.
Oh, well, we're aiming high for next week, although it's not looking good from what our sources tell us. We will have at least one big time domer who's out in Vegas right now. Might have another. Not holding my breath on that one, but you guys will like it. We'll have a guest who will give you the lay of the land out there, gambling otherwise, for Irish fans. I think you guys will like it. And yeah, who doesn't love a trip to Vegas? I'm looking forward to it. I can't believe you're actually going to your kids' play and not getting to Vegas the night early. Like, how are you going to explain to yourself?
So it means I'll be going to a show. It just won't be a Vegas show.
Yeah. Okay.
It'll be more of like yes. I'm not even going to describe the show to our listeners because it would put them to sleep if they're still listening. But I will be on that Thursday night, and then Friday morning on a flight to Vegas. You get in there Friday night, so we'll have to connect at some point. I think we're both staying at the same hotel, but connect not to the point that we don't make it to the game at 4:30 local time on Saturday. Maybe it's gonna be a struggle for some Notre Dame fans, and God bless you if you're one of those.
I'm looking forward to. I guess I lived on the West Coast when I was like a baby, but like the idea of like living a lifestyle where you can wake up and have live college football on at 9 a.m. is just like the coolest thing in the world to me. And I look forward to relishing in that next Saturday in Vegas.
It's going to be a good time. So we will be back next week with at least one show, and then Matt and I will be in person in Vegas for post-game BYU a week from Saturday. Hopefully they don't put Alabama A&M on the same time slot as Notre Dame BYU, so we can sneak some looks at that too. So
is that set? Game. That's a CBS night game, yeah.
All right. Well, gonna have to be split strings. You make sure you bring your iPad, please.
I think Notre Dame BYU is going to be a more competitive game. I will say that.
I just want to see if Nick Saban murders Jimbo Fisher. It's all off the field action there. So we'll be back next week and next Saturday. We hope all of our listeners enjoy your bye week. A stress-free Saturday. After the last 4 weeks, you've earned it. And Matt and I have earned it as well. So until then, thanks for being with us on the latest episode of The Shake.